Right, let's get one thing straight from the start. Irish history isn't just a straight line. It's more like a tangled ball of wool that a kitten has been playing with for a few thousand years. To find the beginning, you have to go way back. We're talking before the pyramids, before pretty much anything you can think of. The first people to rock up to this rainy island did so around 10,000 years ago, probably chasing after some very surprised-looking deer in a flimsy boat. These were the Mesolithic hunter-gatherers, living a life that makes your camping trip look like a five-star hotel. Around 4000 BC, the Neolithic farmers arrived. These folks were planters. They weren't just chasing lunch, they were growing it. They built massive stone structures like Newgrange in County Meath, which is essentially a giant, incredibly clever tomb aligned with the winter solstice. It's older than Stonehenge, older than the pyramids of Giza. After the Stone Age came the Bronze Age, which, as the name suggests, was all about bronze. This new metal changed everything. This era gave us some of the most beautiful ancient artifacts you'll ever see. Golden torques, intricate lunulae, and fearsome-looking axe heads. This was also the time of myth-making, when stories of great heroes like Cu Chulainn and the demigods of the Tuatha De Danann were probably first told around crackling fires. Then around 500 BC, a new crowd turned up, and they really left their mark. These were the Celts. They arrived from mainland Europe, bringing with them iron weapons, a new language, and a very distinct artistic style full of swirls, knots, and mind-bending patterns. They didn't so much conquer Ireland as they did move in and mix with the existing population, creating a new, vibrant culture. The Celtic influence became the bedrock of what we think of as ancient Irish culture. Just as Celtic Ireland was getting comfortable with its warrior kings and mystical druids, a new idea arrived that would change the island forever. This idea was Christianity, and it didn't arrive with an army, but with a handful of missionaries, the most famous of whom, of course, was St. Patrick. This new religion turned Ireland into something quite unexpected, a beacon of learning in a Europe that had plunged into the Dark Ages after the fall of Rome. While libraries across the continent were being burned, Irish monks were busy in their remote monasteries, meticulously copying and preserving ancient texts. It was here that they produced the incredible illuminated manuscripts, like the Book of Kells, where Christian scripture was decorated with that wild, hypnotic Celtic art. This golden age, however, was about to get a rude awakening. At the end of the 8th century, a new visitor appeared on the horizon. They arrived in their terrifying longships, first to raid the wealthy, undefended monasteries for their gold and silver, and then to stay. They were fierce, efficient, and caused absolute chaos. For about 200 years, it was a cycle of raids, battles, and general mayhem. But the Vikings weren't just mindless thugs. After the initial period of smash and grab, they started to settle down, building Ireland's first proper towns. Places like Dublin, Waterford, Wexford, and Limerick all started as Viking settlements. They intermarried with the local Celts, creating a new Hiberno-Norse culture. They introduced concepts like currency and international trade on a grand scale. Just when the Irish and the Vikings had sort of figured out how to live together, a new group of invaders arrived. This time, they were the Normans, French-speaking knights who had already conquered England, led by the formidable Richard de Clare, better known as Strongbow. The Normans arrived with superior military technology armored knights, crossbowmen, and a knack for building castles very, very quickly. For a few centuries, it was a messy affair. The Normans controlled a patch of land around Dublin known as the Pale, and their influence waxed and waned beyond it. The Tudor conquest in the 16th century was particularly brutal, followed by the policy of plantations, where Irish Catholics were kicked off their land, which was then given to Protestant settlers. This was followed by the penal laws in the 18th century, a set of oppressive rules designed to crush the Catholic Irish. This brings us to the single greatest catastrophe in Irish history, the Great Famine. In the 1840s, the majority of the rural poor were completely dependent on a single crop, the potato. When a mysterious blight, a type of fungus, swept across Europe and hit Ireland, it destroyed the potato harvest year after year. The result was unimaginable horror. Around 1 million people starved to death, and another 1 million were forced to emigrate on what became known as coffin ships, fleeing to America, Canada, and Britain. The British government's response was slow, inadequate, and ideologically rigid. While Ireland starved, food was still being exported from its ports to England. The aftermath of the famine left Ireland a broken and traumatized place, but it also hardened the resolve for change. The 19th century was filled with movements pushing for everything from land reform to full-blown independence. The Irish Parliamentary Party, led by Charles Stewart Parnell, came tantalizingly close to achieving home rule through political means in London. But for many, politics was honestly just too slow. A more radical, physical force tradition of republicanism simmered just beneath the surface, believing that England would never let Ireland go without a fight. And this simmering pot boiled over on Easter Monday, 1916. A small group of rebels, including poets, teachers, and union leaders like Patrick Pearse and James Connolly, seized key buildings in Dublin and declared an Irish Republic. The Easter Rising was, militarily, a complete failure. But then, the British authorities made a monumental mistake. They decided to execute the leaders of the Rising. This act transformed the defeated rebels from troublemakers into martyrs. The executed leaders were replaced by a new, more ruthless generation of revolutionaries, personified by Michael Collins. In the 1918 general election, the Republican Party, Sinn Féin, won a landslide victory. This led directly to the War of Independence, a brutal guerrilla conflict fought between the Irish Republican Army and British forces, including the notorious Black and Tans. By 1921, both sides were exhausted and a truce was called, leading to negotiations in London. The result of those talks was the Anglo-Irish Treaty. It offered Ireland a significant degree of independence as the Irish Free State, but it came at a huge cost. It required an oath of allegiance to the British monarch, and, crucially, it partitioned the island. 6 counties in the northeast became Northern Ireland. The treaty split the Republican movement down the middle. This disagreement plunged the newly born state directly into a bitter and tragic civil war, where former comrades fought and killed each other. The pro-treaty side won the Civil War, but it left a legacy of deep political bitterness. The first half of the 20th century was tough. The Irish Free State was poor, conservative, and culturally isolated. For generations, Ireland's biggest export was its own people, as young men and women left in droves for Britain and America in search of work. Meanwhile, in Northern Ireland, systemic discrimination against the Catholic minority erupted in the late 1960s with a civil rights movement, which was met with a violent backlash. This spiraled into a 30-year conflict known as the Troubles, a complex struggle between Republican paramilitaries, Loyalist paramilitaries, and the British Army. It cost over 3,500 lives. Painstaking work by politicians led to the Good Friday Agreement in 1998, bringing an end to the worst of the violence. In the Republic, smart economic decisions in the 1990s, combined with EU membership and foreign investment, ignited an unprecedented economic boom known as the Celtic Tiger. For the first time in its history, Ireland became a country of immigration, not emigration. Society became more confident, outward-looking, and liberal. Today, Ireland is a modern, vibrant, and complex nation. It's a global hub for technology and pharmaceuticals, a cultural powerhouse, and a confident member of the European Union. The journey from ancient stone tombs and warring Celtic tribes to a peaceful, prosperous society has been long, often painful, but ultimately a story of incredible resilience, creativity, and an enduring spirit that has never been extinguished.